Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Aim High and Achieve podcast. Today we have Matt Jeffery as our esteemed guest. Matt is a business and life coach as well as a volunteer for a number of community projects on the Isle of Sheppey, so it's great to welcome Matt onto the show. Some listener notes. Running alongside this podcast project and Matt's life coaching and community projects, we both work within the elevator industry. So Matt, from time to time, may draw analogies between the two. I hope you enjoy today's show. Hello, Matt. How are you doing?
How you doing, mate? You well?
Yes, I'm very good, thanks. Welcome to the podcast. Great to have you on. Thanks for giving your time for this. So just give the listeners a brief introduction of who you are and what you do.
So Matt Jeffery, I've got creative and my business is called mattjeffery.com. So business and personal coaching is primarily what I'm doing and what I'm talking about today. Business coaching, it's two parts, really, what I do. And I call it straight lines and gaps with the business coaching. The straight lines is what should you be doing. This is a bit like, if we go to the lift analogy, like what should be fitted and how it should it be and is it compliant. So it's the mechanics of a business and how it should function. And then the gaps are either where the business functions aren't by design or the people working in it aren't doing what they're doing. So if we go back to the lift analogy, your items list is the gaps on what needs to be done to make the lift compliant, and then the compliance of the rules in how the lift should operate. So that's what I do with people, and the gaps part of it is my bread and butter, which is the coaching, and the business mechanics of it is really just so I can create an understanding of the truth. It's like running a plumb line down a lift shaft. It's like, should you be doing this? Shouldn't you be doing this? You know. So that's pretty much what I do is with the coaching.
So when you sort of when you get a customer, you get a new client coming in, how much sort of in depth are you going in the start into the business? Are you sort of, are you full on in there, sort of delving into it, maybe even spending a day with them or a few hours with them, or is it more sort of over Teams or Zoom or something, and then sort of get to know the business gradually, start looking at sort of, do you go into accounts, or is it just sort of the functionality of things?
So it's a bit like if you went to a lift and done an items list. Right. we sit and we talk. So the first thing I talk about is the business flow. So I have this Fibonacci shape and talk about business flow. So every business model's got a flow. So you've got one with this podcast. We're in and actively recording a podcast. So this might be number 3 of 4 of 6 sections. So 1 and 2, we've done a connection and we've met and we've talked, and now we're recording number 4 or 5, maybe editing, and then 5 or 6 might be posted and putting it out there. But there's this cycle of habits. So I talk about that with the clients roughly, what's your business, and then talk about the pain, have they got the sales figures that they want? Where is that lacking in the business? And usually it's a bit like if I said to you, what's the biggest pain in your ass at the moment? You would go to a point where this area of my life is, I have this top trumps thing, and they might say that, okay, well, I can get orders, but I can't deliver because we haven't got enough bums on seats. So it might be in recruiting. And you sort of get to a stage, I think coaching I see is like boxing and sparring. You get to a stage where if you and me got in the ring and we spent a couple of minutes moving around, we'd soon get to understand who's the better boxer and then some of the things that one of us needs to do to improve. And you're just trying to sort out these gaps, and it can be uncomfortable and vulnerable because it's like, well, have you got a marketing plan, Steve? But sort of, we'll show, you're being tested on what and why and how, and then that just opens up where you've got a gap. So that's the sort of the first conversation. I get to a stage where I like to tap out, or get to a stage where I can hand on heart show them where the value would be. If we work together, this would be some of the areas we would work in, and get to a stage where, because coaching's not like we both worked in the lift industry. If you've got a building that needs a lift, you don't question it because compliance says it needs to have disabled access. So it's a box that's got to be ticked. What lift and how is what you decide on the price. But with coaching, you've got to unroll and unpack why they want it, because most people don't want coaching. They want what coaching can give them. And you have to unpack what that is, whether that's coaching can give you employees that stay for more than 6 months and enjoy working at that business. But that would give them, what that would give them would be continuity and business growth, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to get to the outcome, because no one wants coaching. I've got a coach at the moment that I'm paying because I want to write a book, and I don't want to pay her, and I don't want to sit and to go through and red pen everything I write, but I'm shit at writing. So I want to write a book because I want to leave it for my kids and grandkids. I want to write a book because I want to give it to clients to read before I start working with them, and I want to write a book to create the content to help market what I do. So there's 3 reasons why I want to write a book. I don't want to write a book.
No. Is that almost like your general philosophy then? It's almost like you could talk for 3 hours on a podcast, and that's a kind of a good way of getting what your philosophy is out to people. So I suppose and as well, going through the process of writing a book, it's kind of something similar, but it's a physical thing you can give as opposed to somebody having to listen.
Yeah, a lot of it is when I start working with clients, I try and engineer myself out as quick as possible. So if I can give them a book to read, when it comes to the coaching, it's a bit like me giving you, if it was boxing, basic training. So if we got in the ring, I wouldn't have to tell you how to stand. You would stand a certain way. So we've got past stance, we've got past habits, we're already getting stuck in. So part of the book is giving them that so we can shortcut, having the same conversation 10 times. So, and it's actually, one of those things. At the moment, I say I'm on a ratio of 8-1. So I might write something, a paragraph, and we've got to filter it down about 8 times till it gets to a point where it can be left in the book. My son says to me, "Dad, you said 50 words when you could say 3." I'm like, and I know I'm like that. So this has been good for me to reflect and think about what I'm saying, how I'm writing. But my point coming back to having a coach is I don't want a coach, but I want someone that can help me and hold my hand and get me to the stage where I can publish something. And that's
more like an editor, say, who's been there and done it and can sort of, iron out the creases, save you a lot of time. Because I can imagine, as a business consultant, really, or an editor of a book or somebody giving you advice, the idea is that you're paying because you want to not necessarily save time, but you want to make sure your time is used productively and not you don't want to spend a week writing something, not paying an editor for advice, and then after a week you've got to spend another 2 weeks redoing it because you found that this isn't the right way. Whereas obviously if you have an editor, they're working alongside you, you're probably going to only need the editor once before you've learned kind of what their role was for the next time almost.
Yeah, the thing I've learned, so I'm writing a little bit about surrender at the moment. So there's this mindset, movement, alignment are these 3 systems I'm writing about. And in a mindset and alignment, they all link to each other. But this surrender, I got to a stage at some point that helped. So when I started my journey years ago, and I started going on my coaching diploma and then investing in coaches and therapy and workshops, and then you get to a point where, and one of the things for me, the fixed ego, like I don't need help, I can do what I could do. Coming from the lift industry, we know those people. Like, who are you to tell me what to do?
I was one of them. I was one of them, 100%. Early 20s, I can categorically say people were giving me advice, and I was thinking, "Nah, mate, you don't know shit. I've got control of this. No worries."
I know.
And when I look back now, 100%, I know what I'm doing. 100%. When I look back now, no, I didn't know shit. I didn't know 1%.
So this is surrender. So we have these attachments too, and freedom is the other side of them. So the attachment to paying someone to help me get better, and this willingness, like, I can't write for shit. Can you help me, please? I'm willing to pay for you. And I mean, she actually just changed the way I use Word to give me an index to navigate around it. You know, there's so many things that she came up and she gave that when you open up, and this is my first point of working with people, open is the first thing that without it, there's nothing we can do. You know, it's the first thing. I think it's why I'm good at a coach, because with people, I'm sincere, or we get to a stage really quickly where we can have that conversation and say, like, are you willing to be open? Because honestly, I've just done trained for a white collar boxing event, but I got my nose broke a few weeks before the fight, so I had to get it straightened, and it meant I couldn't fight. But I was sparring, and in that space initially, I joked with my coach that I wanted a dummy. So when my coach used to say, right, gum shields in, I used to shit myself because I knew I was going to be sparring, and it was like, fuck, you know. And then when you get in the ring and you start moving around, it's unless you're comfortable doing that sort of thing, you know, for someone like me at 50, I've trained and boxed for years, but sparring's another thing. And it's such a vulnerable space. And I think
there's no hiding place, is there? There's no hiding place. You're in the ring. There's nowhere to go. It's you.
Coaching,
you've got to rely on yourself. And
you get into a space where my goal is to open you up. And then the difference is it's the same with sparring. You know, when I broke my nose, I look back at the video. You know, we all joked when I got out the ring, but it was like I dropped my guard. You know, and I think some of that was fitness. Some of it was a bit cocky, but the truth was I should have held my guard up and protected myself more and just got caught with my guard down. So I would say the work, is keeping my guard up, but actually my work is fitness. So I get to a point where that's the work. And it's the same in a coaching session. You might come in a coaching session and say, if we was talking about your podcast, you know, would you want to do video? Well, yeah. Are you? No. Okay, well, that's the work. Like, so what's the next step in that? And you find that, and this is all based on where you want to go in life. You know, if like you just want to do an audio podcast, then that's by design. That's exactly how I want to do it. But for me, so for example, off the back of this white collar boxing, we come up with this white collar comedy. What could be scarier than getting in a ring and getting the shit kicked out of you, getting on stage and doing comedy? So I've got a comedian. We're setting up this thing where you have 4 lessons with him, like over 4 weeks, and then we get up in a gig and we all have to do a 5-minute set. And I was saying to the guys at boxing, like, would you rather get in the ring for 3 rounds or get up on stage? And most of them was like, I'd rather get in the ring, get the shit kicked out of me than stand up in front of my mates and get laughed at, or you know. But that space is exactly the same space of being vulnerable in moving towards something you want to do. Because I don't want to be stand up. I want to be the man that can. Same with the boxing. I want the freedom to be fighting fit in my 50s. And that coming back to being open from the start, first thing you do in the gym is warm up. It's the same in the session. So, yeah, that.
I mean, what I'm interested. You have your boxing, the coach. You have so many things going on in your life, day job. How do you sort of go about planning, structuring your life to give everything to all these things that you've got going on? You know, most guys, you know, I mean, we're not too far away in age, 40, 50. You know, I'm not going to say most, but maybe most people are sort of do the 9 to 5. They come home, feet up on the couch. You know, they don't have, you know, all these projects going on. How do you find that personally, managing everything you have going on and keeping focused, keeping motivated every day to be doing all these things?
Yeah, so I've transitioned into this. So I've got a lift company with my family. So me and my brother run that, Legacy Lifts, and I allocate Mondays and Tuesdays to that. Not full time. So this Monday and Tuesday I was in Whitstable. I took myself off to write my book. So that's Mondays and Tuesdays. Wednesdays I commit to Think and Believe, which is the community stuff. So I've been in the podcast studio today and getting someone on to produce the podcasts for the community stuff. And then Thursday, Friday, I have my coaching clients in. So I structure my week. But it started off, I was doing that when I was working full time with a VA. So I had a virtual assistant working. They would work on the coaching stuff on some days. And I used them to do it. And I'd recommend looking into that for outsourcing your podcast stuff, because there's a lot of stuff you can just give them to do and chuck the audio on and edit and stuff like that. So I had a good book I read was the Tim Ferriss 4-Hour Work Week. And that really talks about automating yourself and business and this, that, and the other. So I've transitioned into that, but my methodology with coaching, mindset and movement and alignment. In movement, I talk about habits, and with the lift shaft, we have guide rails with structured brackets called combinations. In a boxing ring, we have combinations of punches, and on a trellis in a garden, we have a combination of supports. And it's just this fucking day by day doing the same shit all the time. So for everything I do, I have a structure. So in the mornings I go to the gym, and if I'm doing weights, I do 3 exercises. Takes me up to 30 minutes. It's not a lot of time. And then I go into Costa. I spend an hour doing artwork, and then I'm good to go. And then if I'm not doing that, I'll do cardio, and I'll come back and work in the studio. But I always do artwork every day, and now I'm doing writing every day. So I find that just coming up with structure, something as small as and as little as I've got to go to the gym and do 3 exercises once a week. So start with a pattern. So I started off just going to the gym, and I'd do something, but max it out to 15 minutes. So start with a habit. And so small that it makes you laugh. Like, is that all I've got to do?
Yeah.
Suddenly it's like boxing. You're just forming it. You're just forming this stance and structure in how you stand, how your week looks. I don't know if you've got a structure to your timing for your podcast, but what days it is, what times it is, and you suddenly get a structure and a formation, and you take the thinking out of it. You just engineer that. You watch a boxer throw combinations. He hasn't thought about it at all. His body is just bang, 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 bang. Yeah. And it just comes so fucking natural. You watch someone like Mayweather, it's just, he's laughing in between punches, and you're like, how can you get that good? But then if someone watches you in a lift shaft and you're like, oh, check that voltage, check this, check that. And they're like, how have you got to that stage where you know why it is it's missing the top floor, or why it is? Like, it's just...
Yeah. I think that's a good point, actually, because I think that what you're talking about there is... I obviously don't have it in podcasting yet. This is a very new podcast. I'm learning all the time. But in the way my mind is now, that I know this might take 10 years of me building. And now I have that delayed gratification that I know. And it was the same in the lift business where I am in that. It's taken me 23 years to get to the point now where I almost don't have to think when I'm doing something. I'm so experienced with so many different things that it's just totally natural to me, and life is very easy. I'm not really ever stressed out too much with it, because I've done it for so long and dedicated so much of my life to it. But nowadays, this kind of delayed gratification, if you like, where you're going to think, and I didn't have that in my early 20s. I wanted to be king of the world there and then, and I didn't listen to anybody. But as I've got older now, more experienced, now I've learned, it's taken me 20 odd years to get to this point where I am. So any projects I do, I have this thing where I know it's going to take me 10 years, or, I don't know what the saying is. Is it 100,000 hours or something? It's like the golden hours that it's going to take you to master something. And we've kind of lost that now, I think, a little bit with this social media sort of instant reward, instant gratification. If it's kids see influencers making $100,000 an ad on Instagram, and they think, well, that's what I'm going to do. And the world is not like that. It's a fucking harsh place, and it's going to spit you out, You ain't going to get a job doing that.
Yeah, I've got these top trump cards that I do with clients. So if you was to say, okay, like you want to be a project manager, you'd come up with 6 qualities: so like time management, some sort of skill level in the subject you're project managing, communication. But I always put in there this integrity, because what happens is most people nowadays, you've got to have, and it's when we used to take on people with the lifts, me and my wife used to have a measurement of grit. Like, how gritty is this fucker that's sitting in front of us? Like, we're going to get to a job. We're in Wales and we got to finish the lift before we come home. But they want to be home because they want to go to the cinema with their friends. It's like, can we stay late? No, I've got to go back because I've got, how gritty is this person going to be in perseverance? And what you get to realise, and what I've realised, is there is so much fucking goodness in graft, like in work. Because what happens is people think, I want to earn this money so I can sit on my ass and do fuck all. And that is it's so empty. Like, got to the stage where I don't necessarily need to work full time, and it drives me around the bend. And what I find, and this is this mindset movement and the alignment, which is a part of it, is you want to be applying yourself like a motherfucker to something that gives you so much passion. Like, it would probably bore you now if I said I want you to test the same lift 20 times. It gets to a stage where your day has not got any energy. So this alignment is to the sun. And when you lose that energy, it's like, yeah, they can pay you X amount, but it still doesn't make that day something you want to get up and out of bed for. And this is this alignment bit. And coming back round to that integrity, that to learn something new and this surrender into doing the work, and enjoy the fact that this is going to be hard and settle into it. So I remember when we was working together and I was running ME12 lifts, I remember being conflicted with not getting out of that business into my coaching business quick enough. I remember having a session with my coach. I was at Canary Wharf. I had some engineers in for the weekend, but I had to go in and supervise them, and I had the ump. And we talked about it being like traffic, that I was on the right route. And it's a bit like in traffic that you can look at all the other routes that are alternative, but the one you're in is the right route, and you've just got to sit in it. And I just thought, well, I'll do that in traffic. I'll turn the music up and I'll just chill the fuck out and I'll enjoy it. And sometimes that route with the podcast is you're on the right route because you want to have a successful podcast. And that conflict is like, I thought it would have been quicker. And it's like, no, that's the route. That's the route, Steve. And the key is when you see that, it's just going, oh, and then enjoying the fact that this is your 3rd or 4th podcast. And you'll tweak something and get a little bit better for your 5th and 6th. And I've got this with the book. Someone said you're halfway there when you've written a book, and the other half is selling it. And it's the same with coaching. Like, learning how to be a coach is one thing, selling it is another thing. But
you've just got to put in the hard yards in everything, in everything you do. If you have in this case, a podcast, if you want to have a coaching business, if you want to be an ultra marathon runner, if you want to be a professional football player, people will tell you it's not necessarily talent. It is just hard fucking work. Simple as that. You just put your blood, sweat and tears into it, stick with it. And it's interesting you say grittiness. I'd probably call it resilience, just putting the hours in, putting the hours in every day, doing your best, day in, day out. Things eventually will come right. And it takes a lot of time. People nowadays, they see this instant gratification. They see social media. They get swamped down into that. They're not looking at the long game at all. And it's so important. Anything you do, you've got to stick it out. Be resilient. It's a harsh world out there. I tell my kids, there's one of them sort of coming now to looking at a career maybe and things like that. And I'm saying you have to do what you're passionate about. And then you put everything into it, stick with it. Nothing is going to come easy. It's hard. It's a hard fucking life. So you get rewarded in the end. if you go down that path, I think.
It's difficult because there's an element of, with this surrender, there's actually less, this letting go and getting. I find that I'm really moving more into this surrender, that it's only hard when we're conflicted. So to go for a run, like it's it's stressful on your body and this, that, and the other, but it's only difficult if you're conflicted with, but I don't want to. That's where the hardness comes in, like, and that's the difference. Like, I could quite rather go on site and do a day's graft of fitting shaft trunking and moving stuff around than spend the whole day in a meeting thinking about this, that, and the other. Like, there's, I love sometimes working hard, sanding wood, cutting, and feeling like I'm doing a day's work. It feels good. It doesn't feel hard. It feels hard when I'm going to do something I don't want to do, and that's conflict. So this alignment bit, I find, is if you can see and realign with perspective while you're doing what you're doing, like putting the bins out. No one wants to put the bins out, but you want to be a good dad. You want to be a supportive husband. You don't want to live in a shithole. You don't want to be a skank. You want to put the bins out because you want a clean space for your family to grow up. So that's the alignment. And then putting the bins out, that's just what you got to do. But it's in that, but I want it now. It's in that, but I don't want to do it. I just want to sit and watch TV. It's in that life is hard then, but life's easy if you surrender into, I've got to put the bins out. Because that's the truth. So get off your fucking ass. My boxing coach has got a saying, suck it up, buttercup, no one gives a fuck. So when he doesn't want to go to the gym or doesn't want to spar, he just says that. And so we've joked about it. And I've got some clients where we end up just laughing and saying, boo-hoo, because that's the work, but I don't want to. I don't want to edit a video and don't want to.
In terms of my own mentality with that, I don't allow myself to get into a debate with myself. I think a lot of times, a lot of people, they will sit there and they will start debating about something that by the time they've fucking debated about it, they could have done it. So I run every day, and I don't allow myself to debate whether I'm going to do it or not. I just say, no, this is what we do. And there's no debate. I don't allow the debate to come in. I just have my shoes there. I know they're going to go on. I just put them on and I go. It's the same.
This is the straight line that if you've decided that running something that you want in your life by design, then the straight line is you go running. And what I'm talking about with the gaps is that, I didn't go Wednesday because I had a funny tummy, and I didn't go Thursday because it was raining. Like, the gaps of that lack of integrity would be probably in there. Like, where and what in those qualities you need to improve to be able to keep straight and aligned to the design.
I mean, so many people you see complaining about X, Y, and Z, and I always just think, well, you're complaining about things, but you're not preparing yourself. So, for example, if you use running as a very, very simple thing, if you know your shoes and your kit is ready, you prepared it. After you've had your last run, it's prepared in the same spot. You know it's there. The next day, you don't have to debate, my shorts are in the washer. I didn't get them ready. Or my shoes are wet and they've not dried. So that you cannot let your mind to get into this debate. You just make sure you're ready. Prepare yourself the day before. If you're eating shit and you're not happy about your sort of overweight, prepare your meal the day before. Prepare something healthy the next day. But you're lazy that day, you're going to be lazy the next day, and then you're going to end up eating junk food. It's all about what I've found lately, last few months, is just get shit prepared, make your next day easier and the next day easier, and then before you know it, going back to what you were saying earlier about automation and just doing things without thinking. And a good analogy is in our industry, the lift industry, is like making tools that do jobs so you don't have to think about, DB guide rail distance between guide rails. Make a jig, make a tool that sets that distance. You don't have to think about it. No, you don't have to measure it. You don't have to mess about. You've got a jig, it adjusts it automatically. Done. Next one. And make these sort of, and then it's what I was interested with you, Matt, as we're from the same industry together, and I've seen your posts and things. I really liked them, and I've always thought, if you take a business like Lift and you have these tools and jigs and different things, you can make the same things in life in other ways, to make your life easier. And that's kind of like a good comparison. I mean, we're in the lift industry. I suppose it's the same if you're carpenter or plumber or electrician. You have these tools, and people will use them in the day job, and then their lives are just a disaster. And you think, use the same tools, use the same system,
Yeah, I've got this mindset reset workshop that I've started delivering, and it's got this sheet on it, which is dashboard. And this system for mindset is like a stance with boxing, that being centered, finding conflict, coming from a net zero. There's all these terminologies of be like a dashboard in a lift, that if you've got all of those safeties up and that's in a situation, you're good to go, but you want to get good first. So I talked about, not being in conflict, being aligned, not being more than or less than. If you're going around less than, not good enough. Steve, is it all right if I can, Steve, there's coming from a net zero, even if you're employed by someone, they've got power, but they're not coming from more than you. They're coming from a net zero. So
okay, like an apprentice, you would have said.
So, well, an apprentice, you might, if you come back to the lift industry, people that are fitters talk to apprentices like they're shit.
It's the same here. It's the same here.
They have the right to ask them to go and clean the guides because they have authority, but that doesn't mean they're more than. So this net zero, if you ever watched Harry Potter and seen Dobby's coming from less than. So that's the little elf that is a slave. Okay. So this is where you're coming from in terms of self-worth. So this is one of the things in mindset. And I've got a fault log on the back of this sheet that you start capturing stuff. But when we're talking about tools, being level-headed, there's a great book by Eckhart Tolle about the power of now. And when you're leaning, like if a boxer was leaning forward, he would not be optimum. And if he was worrying about tomorrow, you would not be optimum. You step in time versus leaning. So, okay, what are 6 things you've got to do tomorrow? Okay, and then you write them down. So you're stepping in time, not leaning. But there's all these things in terms of tools for mindset. And I think, again, that straight lines that I talk about at the start, coming up with a jig would be a better system. And that would be the truth. And this is how you set guides. So you would come up with the best system, and then that's how they would work. But this balance along the way of improving the system and improving that engineering quality of how well you do stuff, like with you with the podcast to start off with, as you go on, you might start coming up with forms and doing stuff electronically and having a website, and it gets engineered better and the system is better. And that's just that part of development, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the podcast, I think like anything, just coming into it without any experience whatsoever, I did some planning, and then I thought, okay, well, it's going to be easier, for example, just to do the audio, the video editing, then it gets more time consuming. So just to sort of take things slowly, like I'm going back to this delayed gratification. I know things take time. You with a book, if I was going to write a book, I'd be the same. I wouldn't expect to write it in 2 weeks. You would think it's going to take me 2 years maybe to write this book. And it's about not making sure you're disciplined, but not taking on way too much more than you can handle, and then you crash out. So if you think, okay, I want to be super successful, I want X, Y, and Z, millions, and then you're just overwhelmed, and then you crash because you've done it too fast, too soon. Whereas I think, if using the podcast as a good example, it's very manageable. I have 1 hour conversations, 1 hour probably editing and making the background things, very manageable. I'm enjoying it. Whereas if you were to take on, right, I'm going to do 5 a week, I'm going to do video, before you know it, you're just going to crash out because it's too much,
So I have this thing with movement. We talk about lighting a fire. If you ever had an open fire, there's a technique to it. And I've got an open fire, but sometimes I'll go to light it and I won't have done it quite right. And I'll be like, oh, why didn't you do what you knew you should have done, which was prepare and start off with a match and a small bit of paper, and you build that. There's an art to it. And if you get it right, so there's enough energy. And I have this thing called giving your goals the bird, where if you put your finger up to the sun and you've got the sun's strong enough and your finger's small enough, it disappears. You can just see a fist. You can't see your middle finger, because the power in what you want to do is so much, and that what you've got to do is so small, it just gets done. And this is a bit like if you was lighting a fire up and then suddenly you chucked on 20 logs and it just put it out because it was like, oh, it's too much. This is starting small, like get to a stage where you're roaring, and you've got to a stage where this audio thing is like, I've got this sussed, like this is easy, and then suddenly you whack a bit more on, and it may be
that's a good analogy.
And that really is, you want to get to a stage where it's roaring. And the other thing is, like you say, you can outsource a lot. If you've got a decent VA on board and they did all the audio and stuff, you might find paying a small amount of money, you can go on to do video and X, Y, and Z and give them and that to do. And the cost of that, it's a bit like washing your own car. You could actually be doing more podcasts if you outsource some of that nut and bolt stuff, like having a mate on the tools. So, but that again, there's an art, I think, to scaling and growing. And one of them is, I do this with the cogs and businesses. Engineering yourself out means gearing yourself out and being a smaller part of the business that makes the decisions and then gears it out to other aspects of the. And that would be something with you and the podcast, is you could engineer a cog into that, which is a VA, and then you just come on and look gorgeous and speak and do your podcast and then outsource everything else, But yeah, it's a system to it. It's the same with moving a lift, isn't it? With balanced load, you've got to have the energy and power. Otherwise, and you've got to have the traction, so you've got to have integrity. You've got to have some sort of balanced system, and you can compensate with a VA, so you can have someone else on board to help you shift it. And then you've got to have enough want and will to why you're doing the podcast. So I always talk about the why. It's like that Ohm's law. You've got to have that power factor, because if I said that you had to do 5 podcasts a week, otherwise I would do something awful to your kids, you would suddenly get those
do it
done, because you changed the meaning. And it can be a negative or a positive. You could make so much money out of it. You can move from the negative or the positive. This moves on to something else, but me and my brother was trying to test a lift once, or hand a lift over, and we had it all set up on the buttons and that, and we had put the mains power on, and all the lights and that were on, but for some reason it was taking a call and the contacts were coming in, but it wasn't moving. And it turned out that the mains didn't have a neutral, but the live for the 240 did. But my point is you've got to have positive and negative to move stuff. And sometimes that negative is like sometimes you go running. It's not because you want to go for a run. It's because you don't want to be a fat fuck.
Yeah, well, 100%. I mean, a lot of the time I don't want to go running, to be honest. It's probably 1 out of 5 days when I want to go running. The other 4 days, I'm doing it for the mental health of when I get back. I feel 100 times better. So it's only for the feeling of when I'm finished, and knowing, going back to that delayed gratification. It's like I know in an hour I'll be feeling way better than I am now by running. No debate about it. I don't give myself an option. That's it. And going back to what you said about workloads of businesses and being efficient with things, you probably suffered the same way my business maybe suffered in the sort of 2010s times, when we were taking on so much work, we just couldn't handle it. We had too many logs on the fire. The fire's going out. There's no energy to keep it all burning, and it just went out. The fire goes out, business is gone, because you take too much on. So there's a lot to be said for just sort of building things gradually and, you know, managing. I've got a friend who, he's been through the same thing, you know, masses of work, takes on more and more people, and then you just end up as a tax collector, you know, because you're not making any money, you're just paying salaries, and you're collecting taxes, you know, for the government, because your business now is so big, it's not effective, you know.
And a lot of that comes back down. So I've been having art lessons, and you have these points of perspective, and making sure you stay in these lines of perspective. So why are you setting the business up? Because, and this comes back to this power thing that that you've got to have a why in it, and those people that get rolled up with that. The problem is someone's going to give you some money, and this is where this compass comes in. If I put a magnet to the compass and say, Steve, I want you to do X, Y, and Z for X, Y, and Z, and that magnet's strong enough, you'll go there. But with alignment, the natural magnet. So for me, it's creativity. Like, how the fuck did I get involved in lifts? But I like to figure out why lifts aren't working. Like, our lift business is bespoke. We make bespoke lifts. So there's creativity in the stuff we do. You ask us to do 10 lifts the same. It's like, go to a major company for that. That's not our thing. So, but this energy and in alignment with people, I think, is the key bit. It's the same with boxing. If you don't stand right and align yourself right, you could throw a punch, but if you change that alignment, the power in that punch can be tenfold, and it's just some tweaks. So you can go to work and you can go and fit a lift. Steve Green can go and fit a lift and earn good money doing it, but probably the Steve I know, if you went and troubleshooted, Steve Green could get out of bed and would enjoy much more troubleshooting or helping. And I don't know what it is, but you'll find there's a purpose around it. My purpose isn't around helping. I couldn't give a shit with my clients, and I tell them openly, I couldn't give a fuck. Yeah, don't come to me if you're upset. And customers break down and get upset, but my alignment is a creative one in finding the right solution to help them. My mum wouldn't be able to do what I do, because as soon as you got upset on a call, she'd be like, I'm not going to ask you any more questions, Steve. I don't want to upset Steve. Whereas if I started working with you and you got upset, I knew we was getting to where the work was. Or if you started getting angry, I knew and the part of it is holding the ground. But it's in creativity. I don't care, as in, I do care enough to want to solve and help you through, get where you want to get to, but it's in asking the right questions. So it's creativity, and you will have one, me knowing you, there is a creative one there, or probably a help and a solution based one for there. Like the fact you're doing this podcast, you said to me that you come on and spend an hour and help people. It's still a solution to help people get where they want to get to. So there's something in why you're doing this podcast. It's around people inspiring, so it's something in helping them. There's probably a lot of parallels in you and me in that. It's not that you're doing a podcast on football, or I know you did some climbing. It's not you're doing it on lift engineering. You're doing it on something that's giving you energy. And usually if you can find that compass enough to know what's behind all of that, there's a bigger thing going on. And then it doesn't matter. I know if I go into a business and they say, can you come and work there? I know as long as it's aligned with something that's got some creativity in it, like I'll come up with some funny TikTok videos. Like I'll come up with them, but you can record them because it bores me. But it's in that creativity that gives me the energy, And that, look at that, the jobs that you've had, which have been the most energized, would you say?
For me?
Yeah.
My current job is probably the most energized, because I'm working for a local business. It's not a corporation, it's a family business. I'm part of the leadership team of it, so I'm rewarded by people giving me respect and respecting my opinion, basically. And I love working for the company. I'm not necessarily as passionate about elevators as I am doing this, for example, but I love working with everyone. I'm quite a people person, so a lot of the, I love all the people that I work with. It's like I say, it's not a corporation. I've worked, my previous job to this was for a corporation. You're a number. Nobody values your opinion, although they will say that they do. And everybody's opinion matters. And you do all these bullshit surveys about how you think your line manager is and all this crap, wasting your time doing that. Nobody really listens to you. It's just fucking HR bullshit. So that took a bit out of me, that period in my life when I had to deal with that. And those people who kind of get sucked into that in any role, corporate life, they kind of get sucked into the ladder, sucking off the guy above them to get into their job, which basically is all that they do. So I was not passionate about that at all. Lost a lot of passion for lifts with that company, but glad to be out of there. Kleeman, brilliant. That was the same as my company now. Working with John when I was there, that was great. Sheridan's I enjoyed working with. It was a family company. So yeah, I mean, for me, I'm a people person, and I have to be with people who I see who are equally as technical, who are equally as hard working, who are on the same pathway. And the previous job, everybody is on their own pathway. Screw the rest. Screw you. I'm making for myself, kind of thing, which I really don't like.
So that's like a values thing, isn't it? That I think when you start ticking off, what's that north, east, northwest, north, when you start really getting on the energy thing. So if you had to go out tomorrow and do a day's work where you solved something versus go out and do a day's work where you helped someone figure something out or helped someone, which would give you the most energy?
Oh, helping all day long.
Yeah. It's funny because I think that's it. Because when you start to, I do this thing of north and south. So up north, you write all the things that energize you, and south, you write all the things that actually drive you in a bend. So me doing like bookkeeping and stuff, it's so boring, it's monotonous, there's no creativity. Yeah. So what you'll find though is your north and south. So like you get triggered from that that value thing where people are just used as a number, and I think and feel that you're definitely more people helping orientated than I am in that creativity, that you lend more to wanting to look after and have a right team that's got right values. That if you'd like look at what's really where the energy is, it's working for a successful team of people that are committed and helping them, but you'll find that there's something behind that why for you versus me. So for me, like working with people is something I steer away from. I've got a cabin at the end of the garden, and I've used VAs online. I've engineered myself out. We sub out a lot of the stuff we do with the lifts. I've engineered myself out to be more of this creative, studious, artistic type role. Whereas I'm working in a team. It's the same with sports. That's why I like boxing. Like working in a team just doesn't attract me. I like the crack at lunchtime having a laugh, but actually working in the team and this, that, and the other. It's but yeah, it's just funny where you find where you lie and what attracts you and what energizes you more. When you know that, it's a bit like a compass. Like if someone offers you a job that's going west, you're like, no, I could do it, mate, but you won't get the best out of me. I've got to be doing something that's north.
I think, because, I mean, I am a bit conflicted in that way. That I am a team player playing a rugby team. I have teams at work. No problem going into teams, but I'm also conflicted in that I like to do sort of solo expeditions, or I will go to the mountains on my own, or I'll go running on my own for a long day. I'll go for a 100k cycle on my own. Can happily spend 4 hours alone doing that, no problem. So I'm conflicted a little bit in terms of that, because I do, like you say, a shed at the end of the garden, yeah, that's right up my street sometimes. But I think it's the people around you. If you're inspired by the people you work with or the people you train with, and they're better than you. One thing I've always thought is always make sure you're training with people who are better than you. And if you're better than them, then you're the leader, and you should act like that. And a lot of the times, going back to lift industries, I've been working with people. I've just looked at them and thought, how in the name of fucking holy God you would sat where you are, you know? And that, I find that very difficult to deal with, you know, when I've got people above me who just shouldn't be nowhere near an elevator, never mind in the position they're in. But, you know, that's life. Some people get to the top their own way, and that's fine. And I'll just remove myself from that as soon as I have the opportunity. So I've learned a lot from that, and it's sort of set me on the path. And I will always say where I am. People won't have any problem knowing how I feel. They'll be told exactly how I'm feeling. So that's kind of how I work. But I mean, the teams that I'm involved with in the rugby, I love that. It's brilliant. But again, I do. If I'm doing a solo expedition, I love that as well, you know, just relying on myself, not having to rely on anybody. If I fail, it's on me, and that's fine. I'll learn from it. So, I'm conflicted a little bit that way. But
yeah, I think it's just knowing yourself. And this is one of the things in that, understanding that self-aware. And this comes back to being open, you know, where we started with that you've got to open up and know yourself. And there's so many people like... I've naturally worked quite a bit in the lift industry because people that I know. But initially I thought I'll market lift industry. And when I started talking to people, I realised how closed the industry and the people are. You know, so I've got one of my clients, Canary Wolf. You speak to people there, they're so open to coaching, so on board with it. And then you speak to other people. I've worked with some major companies, lift companies in London. And it's almost like I'm challenging them. Like, what do I want coaching for? I don't need a fucking coach. What are you saying? Yeah. It's like, wait, like just to stop and be open. And those people, again, how self-aware are they going to be if they can't allow themselves to open up in that situation and know themselves enough? And there's so much to that. So much depth to us in, you know, and the more you can understand yourself, it just creates this freedom to be able to choose. So knowing that that you're not going to want to go running, but you know that running's going to make you feel so much better, and knowing why and knowing all of these answers, and when it comes to choosing, is so easy, so easy. And this is where people, when they don't align to actually what and why they're doing it, you know, we all wipe our ass every day, but who actually wants to? You know, it's just something you automatically do. And if you said to someone that's what you've got to do to someone else, it's like, no. But if it's your parent and they're on their deathbed, my best mate, his mum had dementia. You know, he was getting in situations like that where he's caring for his mum. Like, you do it when the meaning changes and you get alignment. And this is coming back to this openness, is where it all starts with. Yeah. But
I'm interested to hear more about your charity work, Matt. So Think and Believe, I think you said you do that on Wednesday. So just tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so my coaching company is Think and Believe, and I trade as mattjeffery.com just to keep myself separate from it. But Think and Believe, I started that up and used the analogies of gardening, but it's about community and people growing. So I have this thing called the Watering Man Can, where I've got this workshop. It's the same stuff. It's MMA, but I use, plants to the sun, and they align to be the warmest they can to attract the most bees by putting the most scent off, and that's their purpose. And they stay flexible and move with the sun during the day. I use the same analogies. It's the same principles in MMA. So that at the moment we've just set it up and created a community podcast studio. I do community coaching, so I trade coaching for volunteering. So I'm coaching a comedian at the moment. He's going to come on and do the event for us, the White Collar Comedy, and that's going to put some money back into the podcast studio. And I've got some artists that are doing some events. So the thing I set up, I was standing outside the Scouts Hall when my son was going to Cubs, and some shitty little van turned up. So we live on the Isle of Sheppey, and there's some places around here that there's not a lot of money around there. I've got a mate who's got a Scouts all in London, and they've got Mercedes vans and all sorts of stuff. And I thought, you don't need one van for the Scouts. You need something you can share. And then I started thinking about applying and purpose and people volunteering. And I started with this theme of people would come and volunteer if it was in alignment with themselves. So a lot of the stuff I do with the coaching and the community stuff is helping people develop, find alignment, and then use that in paying back and helping with the charity. So that's part of what we do. And some of the stuff I want to set up is some retreats and bringing people out to do leadership development and stuff, but based around this. It's called Think and Believe. It's called A Place to Grow, based around this trellis and this alignment of the analogy of growing and developing people.
Is this with youth or
So potentially, yeah. I want to. I'm working with a woman at the prison, so I want to do some workshops with ex-offenders. It's not youth, no. My sister does some stuff with youth, but mine's not. I'd like to make that available, but I'd like to do it with the Scouts and the guides and helping them create a leadership team that does it with the youth. But no, mine is about the personal coaching, and I still think there's a lot of power. Everyone, I think, wants to apply themselves in their purpose, but most people don't know what it is. And if I asked you to volunteer to do something, you would find there would be something that would tick your boat. I worked at the Scouts and I was developing the hall, but they asked me to go and help with the kids, and I see the kids not get off their phones. I just wanted to punch them in the head. I was like, I don't want to work with the kids, but I want to develop it was coming back to creativity. So I was cutting the lawn. We put new windows in the side of the building and all that sort of stuff. So it was that creativity again, but that helps the kids indirectly. So you'll find that if you was going to volunteer and you had a list of things that you could go and volunteer in, it might be helping your community team set up a podcast or playing rugby, whatever it is. But that would find, and it would sit really true. Usually find people that do stuff for charity. It's aligned to a purpose, and they're getting something from it. So
yeah. I mean, it's similar to where I am here in Haugesund. We're obviously trying to build the game of rugby in Norway, for using this as an example. And I'm working with the under-19s in youth development. We're trying to get youths into rugby, but it's very challenging here because it's not a everyday sport. It's not a big sport at all. So convincing kids to sort of come, and we have a junior team sort of from 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and we're training once a week with those kids. The end game is that they're going to come into our team, in the 16, 17, train with a senior team. So it's like, but I like I say, I'm quite a people person, so I enjoy that, and it's effectively a charity because it's not paid. But what you get out of it is the sort of development of people's personalities and characters. You're building characters up, and you're sort of showing people how to be disciplined. And it is life coaching in one way, as well as the sports coaching side of it. So, I mean, it's interesting. I'm guessing if in your case, you've got people maybe coming out of prison, probably, never been given a fucking chance at anything in their life, and that's why they're there. And they probably built up a facade to get through prison, and then you've got to break that down and give them confidence to be able to do something else in life and not to go back to that path of ending up in prison again, so you've got to break it down, build the character back, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I did this whole workshop for a week. It was one of the biggest investments I made, and they called it the script. But if we went back to a lift, you have a data sheet, don't you? What type of doors you have, what type of hydraulics, what type of system is it, how many floors it is, all these characteristics that says this is who you are. So at Canary Wharf, we've got some 50-floor lifts that we've told you're 22 floors because we're only serving 22 floors at the moment. So you're just going 22 floors. But that they've got the potential of going 50, but we just tell them you're going 22. And these people in prison you're going to prison. That's where you go. I think Mickey Flanagan done a really good sketch about being at school, and he joked. One of his mates says he wants to be a van driver, and he was like, "You idiot!" He said, "You go to the school that makes the people
you dreamer
put the stuff in the van. You don't. That's another school. Those people are the ones that drive the vans. And this is where a lot of it is brought up around this, like you say, psychology of rugby's not a main sport. It's like it's softening and opening them up to the new, to the possibilities. And I think with these prisoners, what I feel is there's so much power in a prison, because to do some of the things they've had to do, if I asked you to go and rob a bank, you'd shit your pants, right? But they've done it. So they've got the mechanics and the grit, and they've got the components. I did coach a guy once who was really successful drug dealer, and the system he had with sales, he used to go fishing and everyone would come to him. And like the way he talked and the way he communicated, you're like, all you've got to do is change what you sell, you fucker, and you'll be amazing. But that was the thing, like he had the real characteristics of a great salesman, but the poor strategy of not having a system to apply it to. And I think there's a lot of power and potential in these people, in all of us, but it's just really unpacking and stepping into a new space and fear of like, yeah, but that's not me. I've been doing this artwork of a lion and these butterflies, and the butterflies come when you're roaring like never before. So this, if I got up and done the white collar comedy, it's going to be so scary because I'm not a stand-up comic, right? I'll be shitting. I'm laughing just thinking about it, right? But then I do it once or twice or three times. It's like you in the podcast. Oh yeah, I've got a podcast. Suddenly it becomes normal. Suddenly the butterflies go because you're roaring like you now are, and that's more than you was before. But that's and that's when I come to talk about fear and growth. A lot of these prisoners will come out and they might have to do something that society sees as nice. Well, that's roaring like never before because they're a badass, and that can't be them because that's a new them, and that's scarier than, getting in a ring for some people. Like they could probably box all day, but to go in, I'm someone that goes and volunteers at an old people zone once a week because I love helping people. What?
And
them to step in and do that, it's interesting.
I suppose a lot of those guys as well, they've been around not gangs as in like gangs of New York, but maybe like posses. Then they've got this sort of character to uphold in front of the crew, and they're nervous. I mean, and then you got to sort of break that down, break them away from the peer pressure of what they're expected to behave like, and say, this is what we do now, and say, even for example, talking in front of other people or sharing your experience, it's like so far out of the comfort, something so simple, or it should be, but it's so far out of the comfort zone that you've got to break that down, and you've got to say, listen, don't give a shit what other people are thinking, don't care what everyone else is thinking about what you're doing. I think that's quite a key thing in life as well. A lot of people, they will stick to one path because that's the expectations of them. It's like the classic, my parents want me to be a doctor because they're doctors, and they put you down this path that you don't want to go down, but then you're so far down it in the end that you can't change that path, and then your life's just fucking misery. And it's just finding that strength, to say, no, this is my path. Being disciplined, taking the path that's going to bring you passion and just going for it, and not taking advice or taking criticisms or taking, with this podcast, I've had loads of messages from people. This is great, or try this, or here's something you could try, or when you do this, do that, and I'm brilliant. That's great. Send me everything, because I love just to get all these little things, because I'm open to learning and growing with it. I'm not for 1 minute thinking, oh yeah, piss off, mate, I know everything about this game. I know nothing. I know how to work the microphone and the camera, and I know how to edit it a little bit, and that's good. So I'm learning, but it's like having the capability to just pick your own path, laser focus in, and just keep going with it.
it's so like so my motto on mattjeffery.com is coaching for true colors, like being your true self, and it's so hard. Like it's a joke. What I like about the boxing is like you can see getting in the ring, fighting someone else, you can see why that fear is paralyzing, and it can be paralyzing until you're comfortable in it. But what you don't see is the other fears. So just for example, we was on a FaceTime with my son and my daughter, and my wife had said, "Oh, Dad stayed down at Whitstable the other day," and I was like, "What are you staying down there for?" And they started laughing because I'd stayed away on my own. And my son's in the background laughing, just like, because he just knows what I'm like. He's like, "You're a nut. What are you staying at Whitstable for?" And I was like, "I went away to write." He was like, "Oh, that makes sense now." It was almost like before I was an idiot, and now it's all right, sort of, but that's my son, like laughing or not laughing. But I remember when I told my mates I was going to be a life coach, I've come from the Isle of Sheppey. I'm a lift engineer. All my mates are beer, rugby, football lads. And when I started saying I was going to be a life coach and then started going into these conversations, it was like, I remember I did a video dancing without music. But people were phoning my brother.
I've seen this.
People were phoning my brother up saying, "Is your brother all right? Like, is he gone mad?" And that video is probably the most powerful video. We're actually talking about redoing it, and I'm going to do it around Canary Wharf. But that ability to dance without music is freedom. And you see African kids doing it, and like that freedom to do it, because we need some music on or some wine, or we need it to be the right scenario and the lighting level, and then we'll let our hair down, then we'll enjoy ourselves, then we'll be free. And it's like you've got to learn to do it anyway. Like this surrender. You've got to learn to fucking do it anyway, and let them laugh like hyenas and let them do whatever they want to do, and you've just got to stand up and roar like a fucking animal, and do whatever you want to do. There's a really good film that I recommend everyone to watch, which is the Hero's Journey. It's a Joseph Campbell film, and there's 10 questions. I sent it to both my kids before Christmas and said, if you answer 10 questions, I'll give you £10 a question, so you could both get £100 each. And neither of them did it because it was Dad's coaching shit. But I sent it to a client and they answered it within like, I think 2 or 3 hours and wanted money. I was like, no, you ain't getting paid for it. This film is really good. It talks about us call to action and us stepping into the real us. And this is this surrender, but it's massive for men a lot, but also for women on surrendering into who we could be, and it's scary,
So you kind of use the word surrender. I sort of would equate that to sort of stepping out of your comfort zone. I don't know if that's
exactly the same thing. It's but you've got to surrender. So the comfort zone is doing something you don't want to do, but surrendering into that's the truth. So you don't want to step into a moving car, but if you've got to do some public speaking and that's the truth in developing how you want to be, then surrendering into that is the work. So when I talk about surrendering into the work, what it is you talked about stepping into going for a run. Like it's the same. You've got to let go to just do what the shit's, you could go for a bike ride, but you can't cheat it if you want to get fit. There's only so many ways. There's loads of ways you can do it, and if running is the one that you choose, then step into that. But there's no this gap that you've got between where you are and where you want to be. There's no cheating. It's like an items list on a lift. It's compliant when you finish the items, and that's the gap. And there's no getting around.
You've done really well to equate from the lift industry into what you're doing. I really think that's really great. A lot of the things you've done, I've never thought about it in that way before. I've just sort of thought about it as the mechanics of building a big Meccano set. But I'm really quite impressed how you've taken certain things and then you've adapted it into sort of like a business that you're passionate about, but you've not completely left the lift business behind. You're still doing that, and you sort of use analogies for both of them, which is quite good.
I just did a onboarding with a big lift company and they asked for qualifications, and I gave them my MVQ4, and because I think that's actually when you look at the nuts and bolts. So when you go and do your coaching diploma, it's a bit like painting by numbers, and you have some form and some structure, and it's a good structure to start with. But it's a bit like me doing an MVQ fitting a microlift and then saying I'm a lift engineer. You know, there's a load more meat on the bones in being a lift engineer, and it's the same with coaching. And I think the skill set in understanding the principles, mechanics, software, and theory behind a lift has made you more qualified as a coach than actually the coaching, because the mechanics of it are the same. So you going for a run, I would say, is like a resistor in a shaft. You're dissipating the shit energy and you're keeping it clean, because without having resistors or stuff like that, you get spikes and you get all sorts of shit and software that messes you all up. We had a lift once that wasn't earthed properly, and every time it moved, everyone's TVs in the flats went off. It wasn't earthed, you know, so there was interference. And this is like you're going for a run just to earth and clear up, and all of those sort of systems that I think I've done it. And I said it in a meeting today. We had this guy talking about the podcast and production and all this technicality, and I said explain it like we're six. And that's why I think I've done what I've done, is to try and figure out something that's technically, you know, that's technical and make it so it makes sense to a 6-year-old. Because
it's fantastic.
Yeah, going for a run, if you didn't dissipate that energy in a lift, you would hold and store all that, and it's not good. And you going for a run is just the same as that toaster in the lift shaft, just burning off that shit. But I would come back and say that that's probably because there's not a balance in terms of there's a reason why you need to go for a run. There's a difference. I've got some clients that need to go for a holiday. They're not just choosing. They've got, because they're so fucked. And it's like, work on that. If you can get more balance, then you might want to go for a run more than need to, because, do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's anything in life is a balance. You know, there's so many variables: good days, bad days, long work days, short work days, families. You know, there's a million things that people are balancing, and everybody's different. Everybody needs something different, and it's just finding those sort of core values. I think I spoke in the last podcast. For me, just finding those little wins in everything. You know, just find a win. You find enough wins in the day, you have a beer at night, sleep well, and everything's good. You know, if you're constantly losing your little battles through the day, you know, you don't eat breakfast properly because you're in a rush, because you fucking got up late. If you don't take a bottle of water with you, then you've got to buy water when you're out, or you don't prepare your meal, so you've got to have fast food. All these little losses eventually add up, you know. And if you can sort of start the day, like same with a business, if you don't get your van ready the day before and you've got to start doing it in the morning and you lose 20 minutes, that means you hit the fucking M25 at the wrong time, and then you're 2 hours late. Loss, you know, you're building loss after loss. You know, if you get yourself organized, get prepared the day before, live your life where you sort of, you've got it. I know you've used this phrase, live by design, is it?
Life by design, yeah.
Life by design. If you live it like that, and you know, okay, every day I'm going to do this, discipline, then your days just fucking flow so easy, because you've set yourself for it, you know.
I had Billy Schwer on my podcast, and he's wrote a book for boxing. But there's a good, and it's interesting. Come back to the lifting analogy. There's a good system he's got there for a spiral up or a spiral down. And when you talk there about the small losses and this, that, and the other, if you think of the polarity of a motor and you change two phases, it changes the direction. So if you're going in one direction, which is negative, which is down, it's like, oh, fucking hell. And it's going to just go down and go down and go down. If you change the polarity, all that does is change the direction. And like you say, you change to a positive action or a negative action. And he's got this system, he's got this triangle of three things that happen to change that movement. And it's the same with that engineering. And again, those small wins, if you look at momentum and the startup current and getting momentum, which is why it's keen to go back to those small wins, those small, just turning up at the gym, you know, signing in, doing one exercise and coming away again. You're starting a momentum. And if you look at a chart of the startup current when you start a lift up, it's massive. Like we had to try and sell a lift where we done a special slow start because the building couldn't take the current it needed to do a startup. But when you get that momentum going, like you've got some lifts that are running at like a few amps once they're balanced, but that startup current's so big, so you can either slow that start down by just doing something really small and often, and then get into that momentum and movement. But whatever it is just keeping those small wins in a positive direction, even if it's like oh, fuck it, I can't go for a run tonight, but you get everything ready so you can go tomorrow. So I've got this thing at the gym that my attendance is a measurement. So if I turn up, I've done one more than yesterday, and that's still a positive. Like I could go in the gym, and I don't, but there's this saying about just getting the file out. You know, once you get the file out, you'll start the momentum of doing something, and it's you know, if you just go to the gym, you'll probably more than likely do something. But yeah, keeping those. But it's with some days it's easy. I've had some days where I spiral down. The thing that I find, and this is why I call this workshop Mindset Reset, is you are gonna get fucked. It's the same with exercise, and we have a recovery rate in exercise that how long can you maintain a resting pulse, but how quick can you get back to it, and that's how we measure your fitness. And it's the same with mindset. Like I did this bit in the book about coming up to. You can remember coming up to not the Dartford Tunnel, Blackwall Tunnel on a Monday morning at 5 o'clock, and you got all these scaffolders cutting you up and getting in the tunnel. And this van just cut me straight up and then went straight over in another lane. And in an instant, I just raged. And he opened up the lane, and I just put my foot down. I was bibbing, like just bibbing the whole time. As I was coming up next to him, like he turned around and looked at me, and I just caught myself. And then I just blew this series of kisses with him, and then just put my head down and just drove on. And I laughed all the way into Canary Wharf. And I just remember catching myself, like it could have been a whole different thing. But my point was, I remember catching this conflict, like, you fucking asshole. Like, and it was values again, like, you just think you own it. Like, there was no thank you, no nothing. I'm fucking coming in, I'm cutting up you, I'm cutting up this other guy, and it just triggered me. And I remember thinking, I caught myself, and he turned around to look at me. And I remember blowing these kisses and this shock in his face, like, what is he doing? Blowing kisses at me. And then I just carried on, and but my point is, it's this mindset reset. You know, in a lift, if it gets messed up, you turn it off and on again, it goes to the bottom, it finds itself. And then we've got to do this with this system of resetting, because you're going to get to a stage where, like, people are just winding you up. And the thing with the art of this, with this mastery, is you can see it coming. Like, I already know there's certain characters. Like my best mate, like, he actually messaged when I'm on here, but he doesn't do one message. It's like, answer me, answer me, answer me, answer me. Just irritates me. My sister's the same. But I know why, and I sort of see it coming. So I see through that. But yeah, there's things that catch you, and after a while, it's like watching Mayweather in a boxing ring, watch him move around someone, laughing when they've missed him, at how effortless he looks. It's like so good, but it's an art, you know.
Years of mastery, years of practice, you know, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of hours. He didn't get that good overnight. You know, it took him years. You know. Matt, it's been absolutely brilliant. We could probably talk for ages, but I'm sure you got things to do. So you're on mattjeffery.com. I will leave a link in the show notes, just so anybody interested in hearing any more can check you out. LinkedIn as well. I know you post some things on there. It's really interesting. So good luck with everything. I'll have a copy of your book when you finish it, so put me down for one.
Yeah,
I'll look forward to getting that. Yeah. You'll finish it. I'm sure you will. Thanks very much for your time, Matt. Really appreciate it.
Cheers, Steve. Thanks a lot, mate.